Welcome, everybody. This is Kelly that I've got with me. This is the Delicately Wild podcast. Those of you that have been following, you'll know that I am moving through an interview process with each of the souls, the beautiful pillars of light that are joining our AZURITE Temple. Really, the objective of this was to have conversation with just normal human beings who are going through their awakening. Many of them have done deep ceremonial work with me, so this is really cool from my perspective, but we do have some candidates who I have never even met. I don't even know what they look like, so those will be exciting interviews as well. But Kelly has done some work with me, much to her shock or horror. I'm not sure how it's all integrated at this point in time, but I really send a beautiful, beautiful, warm welcome to you. Welcome to Delicately Wild. And let's see how delicate and wild our conversation gets. Before we begin, I just want to invite us into singing the tones of creation. I do this every now and then, but I think I do want to have it as many times as possible. And also, you know, I'm here as the person who pushes boundaries. So, you know, really just to wiggle it out, get into the heart space. And again, you can just have this. I mean, you can even pop your microphone on mute. That might be more comfortable for you. Pop your microphone on mute for now, and then once we're finished the solar power mantra, we'll pop into our interview. So for those of you who are watching, the sounds of creation are really just amplifying and stabilizing and anchoring our light body field, our Merkaba, into the correct spin ratios, and really just creating a beautiful pillar of light, because that's what we're doing on the planet, is reinforcing, re-encrypting, recalibrating these pillars of light, which are us as individualized consciousness. So how this works is the same tones as do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, la. So it's 7 tones, and then the eighth tone is an ah. This is our heart tone. So just go with me. Like I say, your microphone is on mute. We will do this 3 times, and then I will read out the solar power mantra just to anchor us into this beautiful energy. So taking a deep breath with me, Kels. And release. Placing your hand on your heart now, breathing in. And let go. Final one on our exhale, we will begin breathing in. And let's sound these tones of creation. Karaya sa tahala. Breathing in. And again. Karaya Sata Hala. Final one. Karaya Sata Hala. Moving to our solar power mantra. We are God, we are sovereign, and we are free. I am divine unconditional love. I am unity. I am divine purity. I am divine innocence. I am divine effortlessness, grace, and harmlessness. I am divine peace. I am the 12-12 masculine rod and the 13-13 feminine staff, fully restored and embodied now. I am the sacred marriage, fully restored and embodied now. I am Hieros Gammas, fully restored and embodied now. I am the divine mother, father, and Christed eternal child, fully restored and embodied now. I am the Holy Trinity, fully restored and embodied now. I am the diamond emerald crystal heart, fully restored, activated, and ignited now. 12, 12, 12 sphere, align, connect, unify, and harmonize. Anchor, seal, unlock, and radiate throughout all stations of identity, past, present, future, and parallel. Anchor, seal, unlock, and radiate throughout all of creation, for the highest good of all families in all kingdoms. So it be, and forever shall it be. Aho, shalom, namaste, Haush, Ubuntu, I am, we are. Welcome, Kelly. So how I've been doing this is kind of allowing people to give either an introduction to their awakening, or how you got led to ceremony space. As we've said, this is just a conversation. So I open the space up to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for creating this space and doing the, I wanted to say the work you do, but the life you do, because it feels so much more than just work.
Yeah.
So sure. I don't know if we have enough time for me to get into all of how I got to this point, but how I got to meet you and join in the psilocybin ceremony that I did earlier this year was my partner has done a few with you and speaks so highly of you. And plant medicine is something I've always, there's been fear. I think now learning it was more a real deep respect that I wasn't sure how to navigate. And in my own therapy and healing sessions, there was a part of me that didn't feel probably worthy of that sort of space. And so, yes, there seemed to be a space left for me, and I just thought, why not? Everything was kind of aligning. And I knew that at least I would have someone that I trust there. And I just kind of went with it. And as you know, that was quite the experience. I don't regret it for a second. That's the first question people ask me. But although I say it's probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, on the same hand, it was one of the most enlightening. And it was exactly what I needed, which is exactly what plant medicine provides, energy medicine. So it was incredibly intense, but my intention going into the space was expansion. That was my word. That was, not to fit into spaces that I think I should be in, to allow the universe to expand me where I need to go. And it didn't do that subtly. So
oh, you're so wise with your words. So wise with your words. And I mean, you are an energy worker, right? Tell us a little bit about what you do, and kind of the conversation that we had afterwards of me kind of going, well, this was an initiation, dear energy worker.
So this is, going all the way back to when I was 3, my dad passed away. And at that age, you don't really understand these things. It wasn't being explained to me, life and death, energy, any of that. I would always feel my dad with me. And that kind of rolled into later years of seeing things, feeling things, knowing things, and just not having a space to be mentored or told, no, this is okay, you're okay, it's okay. At one point I did partly think that I was losing my mind, and perhaps that's exactly what was happening. And randomly I was studying fashion design, and I'd studied graphic design, and I'd studied makeup, and I worked at a big cosmetic company, and it was killing me. I couldn't understand. There was this part of me that wanted to help people. So the fashion was the styling and making people feel good in what they're wearing, and the makeup was to just, I mean, I don't wear makeup. If I do, it's mascara or like a little bit of foundation or whatever, just to enhance what I have and just make me feel just a bit better about myself. And that was never the spaces that I was in. It was always transform yourself and look different, and you should be skinnier and your cheekbones this, and it was just
never
not
good enough.
No, never. There was always something else coming. And
it's like the Zoolander when he's like, excuse me, did your ass just break into my pin or whatever? Like, do me a favor, lose 5 pounds immediately. Like,
that's exactly
oh, I'm
it.
sorry, did my pin stick into your ass? Oh, I can't remember. What was his name? Mugato.
Yes, there we go.
Mugato, yeah.
I actually was looking at some memes of that the other day, so that's very relevant and funny.
Wow, I haven't brought that up in 100 years. So sorry to interrupt. Please go on.
No, but that's the world it was, and it was just so confusing for me. And like I said, I never had a mentor, and my mom and my aunt worked very closely with the angels, and my aunt is very big into decrees and all of that, and so I was exposed to these things, but I was never guided. And yeah, one day I had a friend, and she was a biokineticist, and I have scoliosis, and she was helping me with my back, and she said, do you mind if I practice Reiki on you? I've got to, I'm certifying. And I said, what on earth is that? And she was like, I'm trying to explain, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, what do I have to do? She's like, you just have to lie there. I'm like, sure, I'm in, sign me up. So I lay down, and she worked on me, and she picked up on things that I was like, how is she doing this? And she stopped the session, and she looked at me, and she said, Kelly, you need to get into Reiki. I was like, I don't even know how to spell the word, and now you're telling me I must get into Reiki. So she gave me the number of her Reiki master. I was very skeptical. And I went first for an oracle card reading because I'd never done that, and I was just intrigued, and I'm always very curious. And it blew my mind. It really, it aligned with so much. And this woman literally knew nothing but myself, her number, and my name. And it just felt so good. So I went home and I did some research. My friend took me to a crystal store, and I intuitively selected a couple of crystals. And then when I researched them, they were exactly what I needed. So all these things were just blowing my mind. And now I finally found like a mentor and some guidance. And yeah, then I started Reiki, and I became a Reiki master after 3 years of some deep work and clearing out and all of that. And from there, I've just gone into all different avenues. There's been oracle cards and crystals and shamanic healing techniques and angels, and yeah, it's just really felt like home. And although it's been scary, yeah, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. So,
and you live in quite a conservative
I live in such a conservative part of the world.
Yeah.
It's very frowned upon here. And I've had people come and they say, if my friends knew, I'd lose them. Please don't, mention me on social media.
Oh, wow, shame. This is the thing, like, so we take you as an example where you are seeking the mentorship. And I mean, these are ancient things. And yes, there is much within our dissolving space in terms of technologies at the moment that would say we can get rid of many of those things. They're outdated esoteric technologies, for example's sake. Let's just say that. We throw the oracle cards away. You should be able to access the answers within. Leave the crystals in the earth. Just connect with the spirit of that crystal, much like the plants. Don't take the plants, connect with the spirit of the plants. But everything has its place, and it's so ancient, and it's been there. And here you are as a soul that is really like, I really need some guidance here, because your third eye was obviously open, maybe your clairaudience as well. I can't remember on your form. And then you come into it, and you're like, I found home. And then you start embodying this, living this, and then the people around you are like, oh gosh, there's a witch in the village, you know. So, you know, and it's so interesting because where we're at right now in the collective, from my perspective, and again, please understand that we can only share from our level of consciousness, our conscious experiences, but like from my perspective, how do you explain what is happening on the planet now without going into the etheric, shamanic, esoteric gnosis? Like how do we explain what is happening without going into existentiality as the topic of life and death? And with existentiality, we step completely away from the topic of materialism, where we're like, we're not going to talk about our 9 to 5s. We're going to talk about life and death. And when it comes to life and death, we're going to start bringing in religion, philosophy, you know, all of it. So, you know, and this brings us back to the initial thing is we're on the planet now, moving through agendas which are making us question life and death. What are we doing here? So inevitably, we have to bring these teachings, these ideas, these alternatives into people's realities. And I'm curious, within your little town or the space that you're in, Shame, these people that are coming and saying, please don't tell my friends, were they people, I mean, have they communicated to you that like they've just been closet esoteric people their whole lives and kept it quiet, and or have they voiced their thoughts and belief systems within their own communities, or are they still afraid to do so?
So I would say it's a mixture. There was definitely a lady who her husband was very well versed in what she was interested in, but because of her religion and her upbringing and her family, you know, she would ask questions and she would be told, you know, turn to Jesus, open the Bible, don't, you know, go to these other places. So it was never entertained. It was never, you know, explained to her, or
Wasn't a
just
discussion.
open
Yeah.
discussion. Yeah. And this particular lady, she found me on Facebook and she selected me because I have the same name as her dog.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was quite a compliment because I love animals. So I thought that was great. And I was like, if I can speak to people through their animals, I will happily do so.
Yeah.
And yeah, and she just explained to me that, you know, she and her husband would come to meditation when I was holding classes, and she knew that family was out of town or they were already busy somewhere else. And yeah, it was incredibly heartbreaking. Because it was not allowed to be discussed, and she was so intrigued by crystals. And I mentioned to her, you don't even have to physically own them, you can just work with the energies, you
Yes.
know, aren't comfortable going and, you know,
Yes.
gifting them or whatever it is, because I wanted to gift her one and she said, please,
Oh,
I can't take it.
Shame.
So I returned it to the earth. But yeah, and there's a lot of people that they'll ask me questions and interrogate me, more actually than asking questions. And
Yeah.
there's so much fear, and even yoga in this part where I am, you know,
Yeah.
they were told it lets the devil into your orifices. So you cannot light incense, you cannot om, you cannot chant, you cannot use sound bowls. And this is people in the same age group as me, just different upbringing. But my friend is a yoga instructor, and the wives will slip notes under her front door and be like, we really want a class. Can we do it privately in your garage? You know? So there's these curiosities, but there's this immense amount of fear.
Quite
And
beautiful. I mean, it's sad and it's beautiful at the same time.
um,
Everything is perspective, you know, that's what the mushrooms teach. So yes, let's flip it around and go, wow, how
I agree.
beautiful that that's happening. Yeah.
I agree.
Wow.
People are like, oh, that's so sad. And I was like, absolutely. The fact that you can't just, you know, exist and do what
Yeah.
calls to you, but that they are
There
reaching
is
out.
beauty
That
in it. Yes.
there's
And
people like,
actually quite like covertly so. Like they're like,
yeah,
you know, they're strategizing to allow
yeah,
themselves an opportunity to learn about something different. That's like Amazing. And it's interesting because any of these people could just put on a YouTube thing and do a little YouTube thing in their own garage with, you know, with all the curtains closed. Speaking to the yoga thing, it's really, really interesting because, again, at every level of consciousness now within our spiritual practice, all belief systems are being tested, all of them. So, I mean, you mentioned angels, which prior to us going live on this call, I said to you, had you gone through the code of ethics, the disclaimer, etc. And of course there's a deep and important section there about false archangelics, false angelics, false ascended masters, Metatronic cube technology, etc. Being someone that had, I have no doubt, come through this set of belief systems, as had I, you know, Archangel Michael was my number one G in the beginning of my journey. And I know we haven't done a lot of work together. So I'm curious to throw this in the mix and say, what about those statements with regards to our code of ethics for the container? What curiosity does it spark in you? Where does it bring you to within your belief system structure at the moment? How has it pushed you? How attached are you? Yeah.
So that's interesting because that was the one section, because I think it's mentions those things 2 or 3 times in different sections.
Yes.
And sure, when I was reading, I was alone at home and I was reading through it, and that really, like, when I first saw, I was like, maybe this isn't the course for me. Like, why is it saying this? And there was this like huge like resistance and defensiveness that came up, and I was like, just like, I've met you and I understand, and I know that there's so much false information and all these things that come up. And then it was okay, and by the next time I'd read it, I understood and like respected the perspective that was coming from and where I was stepping into. And then my partner Jet read through it yesterday, and he was like, "Have you seen this?" He's like, "What do you think?" Because he knows that that's like it's been a big part of my life.
Yes.
And
yes.
And
yeah, that's specifically why I've asked you the question, because, you know, for example's sake, we have many different people coming onto the container, of which, let's say, some of them are Sangomas or African people. They wouldn't be working with an archangelic belief system. Yet you, having had your psychic centers open for a while, this is it's like everything. There's like a set instruction code that is spewed out. It's like a fucking textbook. It's like a textbook. So again, I know because I've been through it, you know, and it's why it's why in the beginning, before we press record, I was like, oh, that's interesting, she hasn't said anything about that. You know, there's a lot of information on those disclaimers in the code of ethics, so you know, you may just kind of read through. And so I thought I'd just pop the question in here on our call, so thank you. So essentially you've commented, okay, cool, I've done some session work with you, I know, and you're aware that there's many false teachings. Without me going into a teaching now, is there anything beyond the, I guess, faith, trust, and pixie dust that you have in me with regards to those statements that are aligning, or are you just in a space of, actually, I'm just going to surrender the attachment and stay in neutrality?
So I think there's, again, a bit of both. Is definitely kind of going with the flow. I've been called into this space. It feels right. No, at no point have I been like, oh, I don't know if this is for me, or like scared. It just feels, because we discussed it on the call after mushroom journey. And so, yeah, it's just everything aligned. And then, yeah, I was brought up, you know, treat anyone how you would like to be treated. And my beliefs aren't, it's funny you use the word textbook, because that's quite a triggering word for me, because of my clairvoyance and clairaudience and all of that, and just my innate connection with my body on all levels. Any sickness I had or symptoms or anything, it was never in a textbook, and I was just dismissed.
Mm,
So, you know, I'm so open to hearing other people's perspectives, and you know, my business is for curious souls. That's the like tagline, because that's what it's about. I'm not here to tell you this is how it has to be done. I'm
yeah.
here to guide. I'm here to say, right, well, this is a foundation for you to step off of, and whatever that looks like for you from there, well, you know, that you've got to follow that alignment.
Yeah, you know, and it's basically the container, the AZURITE Temple, is where we get to go into these technologies, these teachings in a far deeper way, because it's so interesting. Each of us as shadow workers, if we're actually doing a light work, we're doing shadow work.
Agree.
Just call it what it is. Each of us shadow workers is working with different blueprints, right? And mine has, and we can get very lost along the path because we are mastering so many things, and often master of many, you know, and also none, you know. As we begin to expand, you're just like, holy shit, I don't know anything. But you know, so part of my blueprint has been to bring people from either zero level of awakening into an awakening, so that initial activation seed, which is not an easy
No.
task at all. And then the other one is those that have stepped, you know, played a little bit in the shallow waters to just keep activating and pushing into the breaking down of further structures with, and of course I have to go through the birthing process myself each time. So when I put this course together, I was like, fuck, this is so deep, because the work that I do with the global community, which I would classify them as grid workers. So this is really big templates of information. We, the collective we already know all of this stuff, you know, we've gone through it, but I'm like bringing people in through this wave, and it's quite daunting, because, you know, I always say to people, if you want more information, so I may have a 4-hour conversation with someone because I know where their level of consciousness is at. But if you want more information, we're going to have to move into shadow territory here, which means I'm going to have to trigger you, which unfortunately means I'm going to have to invoice you, because for me to rip you out of your belief system bubble that is keeping you so safe and so comfortable and so in the love and light and this beautiful space is not an easy job. And then, yeah, then I often lose clients at that point. Oh no, I'm okay. But that's my job.
So interesting. I was reading a book, was it yesterday or the day before, and it said we don't lose things, we just fall into alignment.
Yeah.
And so when these clients do, because I've also been, and that's why I think I feel such a calling for this
You're doing the same thing. It's just at
yeah,
a different, you're doing the same thing, particularly within your very conservative community.
that's it. And it's been so interesting because my business is called Enlighten. So not Enlighten, it's the
Yes,
going in.
yeah.
And then people come with the love and the light and the good vibes only. And a big part, and I recently painted this wall behind me black, was because of the shadow work. It's because, yes, love and light, and, you know, we can wish that for some, but the shadow, we're not going to know the light if we don't go to the shadow.
No.
And I mean, my therapist, her mind is blown at me sometimes because of where I'm willing to go and the things I'm willing to look at. And yeah, part of what's calling me is to, exactly as you were saying, you know, bring those people to an awakening, guide them there. I want that those basic people that are questioning here and there, and you can see that they're interested or whatever. That's where I feel the juice and the pillar of light. I feel that's part of a calling for me. And yeah, I'm just, and I it's gonna sound so bizarre, I enjoy being triggered. You know, I enjoy that part of me. It makes me feel completely human because I feel all sorts of emotion. I allow myself to feel all those emotions. from rage to anger to sadness to grief to all of that.
Terror to terror.
Yes, going back to a particular ceremony.
Yes.
So it's, to me, that's, yeah, it's just, it's such a beautiful space to be in, and to read through the disclosure, because first of all, the code of ethics, for me as a Capricorn, it was very exciting. It's so organized, it's all there, and I'm like, oh yes, okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then to read things in there, I was like, oh yes, this makes sense, and yes, I'm going to wear a t-shirt that says that, and like really getting into it, and then getting to a section that triggered me, that there was this resistance, and I was like, this is good. This isn't an absolute no. This isn't my soul going no. This is going, okay, we're going to dig a little deeper here. We're going to take this to a new place. And for me to be the lighthouse and draw people in, I've got to keep being drawn in somewhere else. So yeah.
Beautiful. I'm glad that the juices of the code of ethics of our Krystic container were doing what they needed to do. And you know, this is the thing. I mean, it's this particular code of ethics is kind of like on steroids compared to the intake form or the consultation form that you need to do for the ceremony. But the ceremony as well is a pretty lengthy space of tapping into sovereign's law and the sovereign's way. And were you in awareness of that, and as your Capricorn energy, when you were reading through the documentation for entry into the ceremony?
Sure. So I was in quite a different space then, and
so pre-expansion space.
Oh, very, very pre-expansion space.
Okay, so it's been a lot this year then.
Oh, it's been
leaps and bounds.
Utterly.
Yeah.
No, it was just a different space, and it was also, there was so much resistance because I'd done a plant medicine ceremony about 2-3 years ago, and it was also not, it wasn't a love and light experience for me on any level whatsoever, from getting there to getting back, like none of it. So there was a huge resistance, and reading through all that, although there was a part of me going, oh yay, there's some order here, and this isn't just someone that's just accepting anyone left, right, and center. There's integrity of the space, of themselves, of each other, of the medicine, of ceremony. But reading through some of the questions and answering some of the questions, I was like, I'm not doing this. No, it's not for me. Maybe next year, maybe next year.
Well, that's the thing. This is the thing with the work, my work. It's not my work. I just happen to be a custodian of in some way, but it's like, it's actually meant to, it's, you know, you speak about my business model to any marketer, I'll be like, it's meant to make you want to maybe not step through the door. And if that has happened and I don't send an invoice, then my job is done. It's just happened now, actually. Like, just so I've got a retreat coming up in Austria. One of my beautiful friends, his father was going to come. He booked the plane, he booked the from Sweden, and it caused a little bit of fire in the home space, which I knew that it would, to the degree now that he's pulled out. And I'm like, it's okay. The work is being done. The work is being done. And funnily enough, it's not with him, it's with the other family member. So it's caused shadow work within another family member. And now they have to sit with it. So I'm like, great, the job is done. And this is the thing, light workers, this is important. Most of your work is going to your Akashic insurance and not being invoiced. This is it. When we come to our next set of lockdowns that are coming now, that's when our work gets done. When you're all meeting at the park and you're settling everyone's energy and you're popping them into a meditation, that's what we're here for. You know, the invoice stuff is just us being masterful in our 3D game and knowing that we're still here on earth and we have services to gift and services to give, and we are of assistance, and we're also here. But ultimately, as we continue through this shift, the big work is not invoiced. you know, like I don't know if I told you, but I was on like literally 11 hours of grid working yesterday with a global community online. Like, it's like we're pulling I'm not even going to go into it. It's big fucking work. And this is actually what light work or the shadow workers are doing, you know. Yeah. Speaking of shadow work, let's dive a little into your mushroom ceremony. We may as well. We've spoken about so many things. Because I brought up the word terror earlier, and you were like, oh.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good word to sum that experience up. Sure. So, as I said, I went into it with quite a bit of resistance, but everything aligned and flowed and worked well, and it all, on a physical level and practical level, it worked.
There was no escaping.
There was no escaping. I was like, please be traffic, please be a road closure. There was nothing. We even arrived too early. And then I just kind of, I lent into it, and I really enjoyed the breath work. That was something that, again, it just felt like home. I was like, why the hell don't I do this all the time?
Yeah, you were amazing. Your breath was amazing. I remember I was like, wow.
It's so funny because I'm asthmatic. Well, been diagnosed with asthma, and it's not my stuff. So to hear that feedback is so interesting for me, because I feel like I can breathe just fine. But when you bring in like medical technology, it says that my lung capacity is terrible. So it's really, really, it's so interesting.
Because I do have the correct memory of this. I mean, I've served breath medicine to many people, but I did tell you that your breath was really, really, I did. Yes. I'm remembering correctly. Yeah.
And I thought, no, you must have mistaken me with someone else.
No, I remember your breath was really good. Like, you just dropped in.
Yeah, it was. And I literally have the word breathe tattooed on my arm. So
was that there before?
Yes.
Okay.
It was my second tattoo, actually. So that's why I felt so like aligned doing it there in that space.
Beautiful.
After the breath work, I felt really good. I did a little bit of journaling. I got my oracle cards because they just make me feel happy and they bring me a lot of joy. And went to the rose quartz labyrinth with Jet, and it was just, there were dogs and birds and butterflies, and it felt really lovely. And then the people that attended, I sat with some of them, and they were just so kind. They were just really open, and they shared their stories, and they told me, oh, you'll be fine. And it's like, this is my third time or my fifth time or whatever the case may be. And I was like, okay, well, they're still alive, so that's positive.
That's so funny that you've said that based on our final conversation at the end of your journey.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
I was saying that's so funny that was your comment or your statement of they're still alive based on our final conversation at the foot of the stairs.
I see the irony very clearly, don't you worry. And that conversation actually took place, and in my mind, in the exact same space. So we were all sitting outside by those stairs.
Okay.
Alive, and the one lady's just had a child, so okay, cool, we're good to go. And then I was quite excited. I was like, I'm a very visual person, and I've got a very like hectic imagination. So I was like, this could be very cool. Oh my goodness gracious me. I was very relieved when you did the dosages, and I was in like the lower section of that. I was like, okay, thank goodness.
Thank God.
And then when you started handing out and calling forward to come and collect and all of that, panic kind of started to set in. And then when I saw the amount that I had to chew, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not good with textures at all. But I did it. And that in itself was a very, traumatic experience. And then I was just breathing, leaning into it. And honestly, within 10 minutes of the meditation, I started seeing all sorts of things, patterns and colors, and in particular Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street, or whatever the thing is from childhood. And I was like, oh no, this needs to stop now. But I couldn't like use my mouth, and I was like, okay, I need to go into this. And it just immediately was shadow stuff. It was just without, they did not waste a second. And yeah,
you mean
then
you did not waste a
I did
second.
not.
It's all
I did
you.
not.
It's all you. Your higher guidance system.
I don't know why I was so surprised, because I don't waste a second and I'm so impatient. So it does not strike me as strange that happened. And then I remember a lot of crying. I remember you swaying with me and having a bit of a chuckle, because I was then at that point laughing, going, oh my God, this is just ridiculous. I was like, I'm never doing this again. And you were just like, so many people have said that, and I see them next year. Like, not me. And then it got quite intense, and you guided me outside to the fire, and that was probably the most life-changing experience, because I could communicate with, I cannot remember his name, I know it was with an A, the facilitator who was doing the fire, and we were having a beautiful conversation. But then I started noticing that he was putting the same piece of wood on the fire and going back and picking up the same wood and putting on the fire and the same piece of wood. And I was like, oh no, I'm still tripping.
Of course, this is such an interesting thing. People always think if we shift our location, it means that everything ends, you know, and this is what I say. I think you were outside during the closing. I can't quite remember, but it's like we're playing a game of time. And this is what's so interesting about working with first timers is, for example's sake, like when I did my 9-gram journey, and I said to the person that I was doing that with, I was like, listen, what is the timing on this? Because that's how I facilitate to you guys, because our mental body, I know that the mental body likes that information, right? So it likes to categorize and subsection in this very linear construct, and it sometimes helps, you know. We create the illusion that it does. It's just a game. It's just a game. It's just a game. So and I love how the human consciousness thinks like once we move location, everything changes, and it's like, nah, bruh, there's no beginning, no end, there's no separation. And you were experiencing massive polarities, right?
Absolutely. That's the dualities. And I remember the facilitator, he was like bringing me a banana, and then he brought me some nachi, and then he brought me some biscuit. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna ground, and I was picking the lavender behind me, being like, oh, okay, I'm coming out of this, and oh, great. And then he would pick up the same piece of wood, and the fire wasn't going in. It was getting bigger and bigger. And then I could not physically, but energetically touch the fire as well as touch the stars. And it was in that moment where, excuse my language, but I literally sat there going, what the fuck is time? What even is time? Because I was expecting to start seeing the moon like shifting and the sunrise. Nothing happened.
And also the thing is, we do, from a quantum physics perspective, in that container, that energetic container, we are in no time. We are in hyperspace. We are in zero time. So it literally ceases to exist. There are so many times, I cannot tell you how many ceremonies I've done where it's like I've looked at the time and been like, how the fuck is this possible? This is impossible. Like we've done like 7 hours work in this container, and we're only however many hours in, like, or someone's their ego death experience. It's like I feel like I'm holding space for 100 years of ancestral work, which it is, but in earth time it's only been an hour and a half or something. It is. So, and that's where we are now. The further in our consciousness that we go, we're actually in no time. And as soon as an agenda kicks in again, this is where this is reinstated, because we have to be in surrender. We may not get paychecks. We have to be in present moment where it doesn't matter. And this is why unity consciousness at this point in time is so important, because none of it matters other than, are we here for one another? Do we have a nice bit of water for us today? Maybe some fruit and a bread, and sitting in front of a fire, singing Kumbaya and grounding each other into no time as time continues to collapse. So yeah, you needed that teaching.
Absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. And it was just, it was becoming frustrating, but it was also so beautiful. And I was, like you mentioned earlier, like there's no separateness. I was connected to absolute. I was the fire. I was the stars. I was the concrete that I was sitting on. It was amazing. And then, yeah, I started getting pretty antsy. And then I remember falling into the lavender bush. By my own accord. I still have lavender bits in my jersey that I pull out every now and then. And I was like, I'm done with this. I'm done. I'm going to go and try and sleep. And I remember I marched back into the sacred space, and I lay down, and that was probably one of the worst conscious decisions of my life. And that's, I died. I was gone, and everything was just repeating itself. If somebody closed a door, it closed 9 times. If somebody turned a page, it turned 9 times. And I witnessed people at my funeral, and I was convincing myself that we must have died on the way to the mushroom ceremony. And I was like, this can't be it. Like this can't be my expansion. And then part of
I like that. I like that. How can our expansion possibly have anything to do with a death? And yet that's exactly what it is. That's all that it is.
Oh, trust me, I learned that. And yeah, I witnessed people and friends, at my funeral, and I just sat there going, but for me, death is expansion. It is peace. It is, just this just literally like a breath, which was so weird, because it's like you take your last breath, but before you die. And it's like, I can't be dead. It just wasn't making sense. And as soon as I went into the surrender of, this could possibly be death, and this is where I'm at, and I need to surrender, I got this like surge of energy, and I sat up, and I remember looking at the space that you had set up for yourself, and I felt this calling to go and sit there, not to take your place, but it was just a space for me to sit, and to expand into. I was no less than or more than the facilitator holding this beautiful space, and that I have the capabilities of doing it myself. Shame. The first person I caught eye was the same facilitator that was outside the fire, and I was poking him in the face, asking him if I was dead. And I said, I need to go home. And he said, I don't think that's a good idea right now. And I was like, I'm going home. And I remember I went back to those stairs, and I sat down, and there was one candle lit. And I thought, oh, how symbolic. Ha, ha, ha. Once I blow that candle out, it's all done. And
that's so funny.
It was too much. I sat there and I looked at this candle, and I thought, again, excuse my French, but fuck you. And I leaned over, and I remember there was some bug caught in like a spider web next to it. And I was like, sorry, buddy. And I blew the candle out, and everything was exactly the same. And I was like, I need to pee. I was like, surely you don't need to pee once you're dead. Like this, no. Like, oh my goodness. And I was in a strop, and I went to the bathroom.
Yeah, you were in a strop. Yeah, that's for damn sure. You were over. And it was so interesting because we'd already reached like the 6-hour mark where you should have been like coming back into your grounding. But I think because you were in such resistance in the beginning, and we pulled you to the fire, you still had to do that work, girl. And then I remember you'd probably come to the loo, and that's when I came in, and you were like, we need to have a chat. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just set up my bed out here. And then I said, right, how this works is I ask you a question, you ask me a question. And the reason I do that is to establish where someone's at in their mental body, right? So I said, you go first with a question. And what was your question?
I remember there were two.
I know what it was, but it was,
I was dead, and then the other one was, am I ever going to see my cat again?
Yeah, so the first one, but you said it so with such a straight face. You were like, am I dead? And I remember just bursting out laughing, and you were not impressed with me. And but I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm laughing when I'm laughing. And then I just kind of moved into a softening with you. And yeah, and then we were fine. Do we do some rapé at the end?
No, I didn't.
You didn't want to do
never done
it.
something. No, I was quite surprised. I thought it was something that you were going to, because you mentioned in the beginning, like to bring in a bit of grounding, we might just do that. And we didn't. We just sat outside and had a bit of a chuckle, and then you let me go inside and rest. Which by that stage I was just like so ready to live. I was like, I'm going to go look at the moon rise. And
that's also an interesting one. Like many people that go through the death, why it's so important and powerful within a mushroom ceremony, particularly those that are dealing with depression, is that there's all of a sudden this will to live because you've experienced the complete polarity.
Yep.
And also to share, I've also had an interesting mushroom experience where I also thought that I died, and I was like, well, if this is the case, then what is the process here? What is the procedure? Okay, cool. Someone finds me. My friend is here. Great. She would then inevitably call an ambulance because we're not just going to bury me in the backyard, although that would be my preference. And then an ambulance would come, a doctor would come. They'd probably take me to a hospital, and there'd be a timestamp on my death, which wouldn't, maybe there'd be a what do you call those guys?
A mortician.
A mortician, but the other one that checks why you died. Something with an O.
Yes. I watched so many.
No. Anyway, so there'd be that guy, and then and while this is happening, there'd be ambulance lights and everything going, and I was just like, oh my God, like I don't want that for death at all. Like I do not want that process after my moment of death, like as in the I, and again, who is the I? What is the I? It doesn't matter, but I think this is where like death doula process comes in, and your will and your will of your testament, like what is it that you wish? How do we wish to the continuation? How do we wish to honor the body while the spirit continues into the next realm? Because fuck that, like I don't want that shit. I really don't. And I feel strongly about it, and maybe there's too much attachment, I don't know, but I feel very strongly about it. I don't even want to be in the system that there's a timestamp. Do you know what I mean? And this brings us back to birth of like, and how we are in the system as straw men, which links to the sovereign's law of like, how do we get caught up in this whole machine, which brings us to artificial intelligence, which brings us to simulation theory? It's fucking wild, And this is what we're actually doing in the container, the AZURITE Temple, as well as shadow work. We are decoding ourselves from the system. Exiting the matrix is one example of the words we use, but there's so much more to it. Do we understand how to be sovereign? And again, we've got next set of lockdowns coming up. Who's all going to fold immediately? I'm already in this process of like, I need to start writing letters of notice, because that's what you do in the sovereign's way, and go to the shop owners before the fear has already begun. Right? Oh gosh, we're all in panic. I'm going to go to the shop owners around my area just before and be like, hey, I'm letting you know now that I'm a customer of this store, and I do not wish to play this game. I will not wear a mask in here. Sorry if this offends anyone, but I'm just speaking to my sovereignty, so that I begin preparing them and myself of like, I don't comply. I do not wish to do this, but I'd like to get a yogurt or whatever, you know?
Absolutely. No, it's been so funny that first year with the lockdowns, and I loved it. I loved my time alone. It made me sit with myself in different ways that I wouldn't normally have done. And that was my first experience, conscious experience of sovereignty, of going, no, like this is not happening. I didn't go to shops. My mom was happy to wear a mask, so she went and she would drop food off. And that's how I existed. And then I got so much family pressure about, "Oh, you must, and you're not going to be able to go into Woolworths." And I was like, well, then I won't go into Woolworths. I don't know what you want me to say. You know, you're not going to put me into fear.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm not having it. I'm just not having it. And I think that's why I'm so excited about this container, to learn more of my sovereignty. And to that's actually how Jet and I met. We were on a WhatsApp group that was like anti-vax. And we were just like helping each other, going, don't go to that shop, they're going to talk to you like rubbish, and you know, this place is fine, and we feel safe because we are standing up against this. Not alone, because for a long time I felt alone.
Yeah, I'm shitting myself a little bit in Europe, because obviously in South Africa, where I mean in the Cape, I was living in beautiful Noordhoek kind of area, Fishhoek area, which is super open, big community, lots of organic stores and stuff. I don't have that here. And I'm like, fuck, you know, like I'm like, yes, I'm nomadic. So at any point in time, I can pick up and go. But I'm also here in this timeline that happens to be the exact time of rest in my calendar, my time calendar before ceremony. And I have to trust in that plan, because I know my soul, like everything is fucking pretty much in alignment. I know exactly what's going on. So now I'm sitting in the space of like, okay, am I exactly where I'm meant to be? You know? And it's intense for me, because I'm in a little village in Austria. And if you remember, like Austria was last year, in terms of the global platform, the first country to make it like absolute law that you had to be vaccinated, etc., etc. So clearly the shadow worker is here for a reason. So I don't know, like it's a bit like, yeah, I need to sit in some meditation, but I believe that I'm supposed to stay here. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And I think that's what the mushroom journey did for me, was just that trust in self. And I knew lying there wasn't right, and all of a sudden you appeared and you took me outside. And like there was just, I had no control over that. You know, you essentially you guided me there, and because I trusted, because I surrendered. And it does sound, you know, that the shadow, that it's interesting, because Austria I visited there many years ago, and I've always wanted to return. So last year I was quite shocked when it was so like, that regimen.
And it makes you think about the historical contracts.
100%.
It's the historical contracts. It's not even this government, the now government. Yes, they're all puppets in a bigger agenda, but it's a historical something or other that it's like, who said who to what, who owes who what, da, 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 which allegiance, which alliance. And it's intense, because I like I said, yesterday was like 11 hours of grid work stuff, where we were kind of it's reclamation of grid structures within shadow vortices and you know, false Holy Trinity locations, let's say the Vatican, for example's sake. So we're recalibrating those codes and bringing sovereignty back into the geometries and architectures and symbols, right? And everything, like everything, it's big. And I kept thinking while I was doing this, like while we were doing this, I kept thinking of Liechtenstein, because that's my actual passport. And Liechtenstein is a debt-free country. It's rich as fuck. Like, you know, I was like, oh, am I supposed to be in Liechtenstein during lockdown? Because, I mean, there's hardly any people. It's probably so fucking chilled. But actually, I want to go into And as I say this, I'm setting it into the quantum field because it's not the first time I've said it, but when we were doing the reclamation codes last night, I was like, I want to go have a cup of fucking tea with the princess or prince or whoever the fuck looks after Liechtenstein, because these guys have ancient esoteric knowledge. Like, they're part of the whole thing. Like, it's if Liechtenstein is the richest country on the planet, and there's no way they're not linked to the Vatican, they're all part of the thing. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm sovereign, bitches. Like, I want to go have a cup of tea and be like, hey, you guys have been interested in this for hundreds and thousands of years now. Come on. Like, come on, let's play this esoteric game in a completely different way. Take a chance. What have you got to lose? What have I got to lose?
Yeah.
I just need to get in. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but somehow I feel like this is a little mission of mine.
I love it.
I know, me too. I'm like, I kind of see myself like kicking my shoes off and kind of like rolling a joint and having a joint with them and being like, come on, let's have a little bit of a chat here. Let's get rid of bureaucracies and here, blah, 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 shma, 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 shma. Like, let's just be human beings here and talk about some deep esoteric gnosis. How about it?
Incredible. I'm here for it. So if that happens,
thanks. So if you know anyone in the parliamentary structures of Liechtenstein, let me know.
I'll go through my phone book, but I don't think so.
Thanks, Kels. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I mean, how are you feeling about I mean, I'm assuming these next lockdown phases are worldwide. How's South Africa's vibe at the moment?
I must be honest, it's probably, we've said it quite a few times, it's one of the best places to be during this time, because there's just such a, like, we don't take bullshit. So like, we're already so angry at the government. We've already got load shedding. We've already got all these things in place that people are just so over it. But excuse me, on a personal level, there is definitely a little bit of fear just around, foodstuffs, and like I have a cat who needs medical assistance. So there's that, to me, is the biggest thing. And yeah, just that learning now more about, like I said earlier, the sovereignty, just that the energetics of it. It's just like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, what is going on? But there's also part of me that goes, well, this is part of what needs to take place for everything to start to crumble. So I'm going to hold my light.
This is the thing. It asks of us, like, how do we wish to act in any certain situation? So this is why I say, like, do I stay in Austria or should I go join some cool eco commune and be all shanty shanty in a hippie village? Like, where is my light and shadow work of best use for the highest timeline, for the highest probability, for the highest shift? And boy, oh boy, oh boy, if y'all on planet Earth knew what some of us shadow workers and grid workers are up to, all I can say is prepare for a big bang, because and let's actually end off with this to eradicate the fear. They would only go into another big agenda if they are running out of energy.
Absolutely.
To
gripping on
to take. Okay. So keep reminding yourself of that. They have to keep siphoning energy, and this is what the AI system is. This whole entire thing is a false system, and it's been functioning because we've all been playing our role very diligently and obediently. This is a very big word within our agenda stuff. Obedience, the obedient citizen, right? But it's all crumbling because we're stepping into our sovereignty, and this is the mastery of our spiritual experience, is to watch the dissolution and be like, woo! It's fucking terrifying, guys, I know, but it is also liberating. So, any final words from you, Kelly? I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yes, me too. I think what comes up for me is just how Oh, throat chakra's going. I just feel so honored to be a part of this and to allow in the fear and the terror, because it's there. I'm human. It's
Yes.
part of the experience, but to not let it take control, not let
Yes.
it make the decisions, to feel it and acknowledge it and go, I see you and I know where you're coming from and I understand. But the liberation, the empowerment steps in and goes, right, you're safe now. Like, it's all right. Let's move forward. And yeah, part of me, however crazy I might sound, I am crazy, so it makes sense. But I'm excited. I think
Yes.
it really is to watch all these systems crumble, and even what's going on in Hollywood with the writers, standing up for themselves. This isn't a new thing. They've just had enough of it now, and because of systems crumbling, they can come forward, and that's just a teeny tiny
Yeah.
drop in the of what is going on and what's at play.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So on that exciting high, thank you everybody for dropping into Delicately Wild. I feel like this was a beautiful, delicate and wild conversation. And I thank you so much. I look forward to having you in the AZURITE Temple. Yes, all my love, Kels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.